Hello, how are you? I hope that you are feeling better. My name is Isabella Watch, full video. Like, share, and subscribe my channel. Friends, today's story is going to leave you speechless. A 15-year-old houseboy and a grown woman, his employer, his madam. What really happened between them behind closed doors? What kind of relationship did they have? And what shocking fate did they both meet in the end? Stay with us till the very end of the video to uncover every detail. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. Let's get started. The silence in the house was deafening. Each tick of the clock echoed like a drum beat in the vast emptiness of the rooms. I had always dreamed of marriage, of late-night talks, soft whispers in the dark of a man who would love me with passion and protect me with pride. I was young, full of life and desire, and like every woman I longed for companionship, but my dreams shattered on the very first night of my marriage. My husband Fad didn't touch me, not even a soft caress or a warm embrace. There were no romantic moments, no intimacy, no emotional exchange, just a cold distance. He said he was tired and had to leave for Dubai the next morning, and just like that he was gone. No goodbye, no lingering glance, only a young house servant left behind to look after me. The boy's name was Arham. He was 16, quiet and polite. His mother had brought him to my door one morning and introduced him with pride, saying he was obedient, well-behaved, and hardworking. I remembered standing at the door, my hair damp from a shower, wrapped in only a towel when she arrived. Her eyes never left the floor, but her son. He looked straight at me, wide-eyed, stunned. I dismissed it then, thinking it was just the curiosity of a village boy standing in a mansion for the first time. Aram quickly adapted to his new role. He cleaned, cooked, and followed my instructions without question. He was efficient, respectful, always calling me madam, always keeping his distance. At first, I barely noticed him. My mind was occupied by other things: loneliness, rejection, the cold absence of my husband. Every night, I sat alone in my enormous bedroom, the bed too big, the air too still. I was terrified of the silence, the darkness. One night, after weeks of restless sleep and anxious nights, I called Arham and asked him to sleep in the room next to mine. I feel scared in this big house. I told him. He didn't question it. Maybe he felt honored, maybe he was just following orders. Slowly, night after night, I let him sleep closer on the floor, then on the couch, then eventually on the bed. Not beside me, but close enough. Close enough for me to hear his breath in the dark. At first it brought me comfort. There was someone near, someone who could listen. If I screamed, someone who made the empty house feel less like a prison. Aram would bring me food at night, cooked or ordered in, and feed me with his own hands, softly saying, "You should eat, madam, or you'll get sick." I began to rely on those moments, his presence, his care, his quiet voice. It all calmed me, but then something changed. I started feeling strange emotionally and physically. My head would feel heavy after dinner, my body sluggish, and sleep would come. Not like a gentle fog, but like a sudden blackout. I wouldn't remember lying down. I wouldn't remember closing my eyes. And when I'd wake, hours would be missing. My clothes would be misplaced. My body sore as though something had happened I couldn't remember. Still, I refused to believe anything was wrong. I clung to innocence, to denial. Aram was just a child, wasn't he? A young boy who needed work to feed his mother. A servant I had taken in, cared for, even treated like family. But the questions started piling up in my head like bricks, heavy and suffocating. Why did Aram always insist on bringing the food himself? Why did I feel like someone had been near me at night, too near? Why did his eyes linger on me longer than they should? One evening I confronted him. "Don't bring food from outside anymore. My husband will be angry if he finds out." I said it, half-heartedly, unsure of my own suspicions. Aram looked nervous. His eyes dropped. His hands shook. "I'll tell my mother to make food for you from now on," he said quickly, almost too quickly. Something about his behavior set off an alarm inside me. The next night, I pretended to sleep early. I lay under the covers, facing away, my breathing slow and steady. Around midnight, Aram entered the room. I could hear his steps, soft and measured. He thought I was asleep. I felt the mattress shift just a little, then silence. Minutes passed like hours. My heart pounded. But what I didn't expect, what I never imagined, was the sound of his voice in the darkness whispering. At first, I thought he was talking to himself, but then I realized he was on the phone and he was talking about me. "Yes, sir. Don't worry. She suspects nothing. I've made her trust me completely. She's weak, emotionally vulnerable. I've already taken pictures enough to ruin her. She won't ask you to come back now. Not after this. She'll be too ashamed. She thinks I'm just a boy. But if I wanted, I could have taken her any time. She's beautiful, yes, but foolish. So easy to trap." My blood ran cold. My mouth went dry. My hands trembled. Every piece of trust I had built shattered in that single moment. My husband, the boy, the betrayal, the setup, the manipulation. I had been nothing but a pawn, a beautiful pawn in someone else's cruel, calculated game. The next morning, the world felt different. The house was the same, the walls unchanged, the silence just as heavy. But I was not the same. I had heard the truth with my own ears. My husband and the servant I had trusted, the boy I had once called innocent, were conspiring behind my back. My hands trembled as I brewed tea. My mind was a battlefield of emotions, shock, rage, heartbreak, and confusion. I had no one to turn to, no one to confide in. I stared at Aram across the dining table. He sat there calmly, as if nothing had happened, asking how I slept, how I was feeling. His tone was gentle, his smile fake, but beneath it I now saw the layers he had been hiding. He was not a child, he had never been one. His innocence was a mask carefully crafted and worn for my benefit. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed answers. I needed to know how far this went, how deep the betrayal ran. I spent the day observing him, pretending to be tired, weak, aloof. Inside I was screaming. Later that afternoon, I called my best friend Alina and asked her to come over. I told her I wasn't feeling well and needed company. She arrived in an hour carrying snacks and warm energy. When we sat down to talk, I couldn't help but break down. I told her everything from my husband's coldness on our wedding night to Aram's increasing presence, and finally to what I heard the night before. She stared at me in disbelief. "This is serious," she whispered. "You need to get out of there. He's dangerous." "And your husband? What kind of man does this to his wife?" Alina stayed until evening, promising to help however she could. That night, I took her advice. I locked my bedroom door for the first time in weeks. I pretended I wasn't feeling well and told Aram to sleep in the guest room. He looked surprised, even a bit nervous, but he nodded and left without protest. I barely slept that night. My mind kept going back to every moment I had with Aram. The glances, the small touches, the food he brought, the way I would fall asleep so quickly after eating. Was he drugging me? Had he done things to me in my sleep? The very thought made me sick to my stomach. The next day I called a private doctor under the guise of needing a health check. When the blood reports came back, my fears were confirmed. Traces of sedatives, mild but consistent, were found in my system. I hadn't imagined it. I had been drugged. My body had been violated, and I didn't even know when or how. And yet the most painful part was knowing who was behind it. My husband, the man I had waited for, cried for, longed for. He had planned this. He had sent Aram into my home, not as a servant, but as a trap. But why was it to destroy me, humiliate me, control me from afar? Or was it all just a twisted game to him? Later that evening, I received a phone call. It was from an older woman from the neighborhood, a close friend of my mother-in-law. Her voice was hesitant, but kind. "Beta," she said gently, "I don't mean to interfere, but there's something you should know. Your husband has married someone else in Dubai, a foreign woman, a white girl. He's been living with her for months." The phone slipped from my hand. My knees gave out. I sat on the cold floor of the hallway, numb. My heart felt like it had been ripped from my chest. Everything made sense now. The coldness, the lack of intimacy, the rushed wedding. Fad had never loved me. I had been nothing but a puppet. Married to fulfill some obligation. Maybe to please his parents. Maybe for appearances. The betrayal was complete. I had been abandoned emotionally, physically, and now morally, but I wasn't going to stay broken. The next morning, I called Arham's mother and asked her to come over. She arrived polite and smiling as always. I didn't waste time. I told her Arham was no longer needed and would be sent home immediately. She didn't protest. In fact, something in her eyes told me she already knew. Maybe she had known all along. Maybe she was in on it too. As they packed their things, I watched Arham closely. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. He simply looked at me, expressionless, as if he'd always known this day would come. There was no guilt in his eyes, only disappointment. Maybe that his game had ended sooner than expected. When the door finally shut behind them, I collapsed on the sofa and cried for hours. Not just for what they had done to me, but for everything I had lost. My dignity, my trust, my belief in love. I had been reduced to a pawn in someone else's sick fantasy. But it wasn't the end number. This was the beginning of something else. My healing, my strength, my revenge. The house felt emptier than ever before after Arham left. But this time it wasn't the haunting silence of loneliness. It was the clean, sharp stillness of truth. I had removed the poison from my home, but the wounds it left behind was still raw, still bleeding beneath my calm surface. I spent hours walking through each room, touching the walls, the furniture, the little things that once made this house feel like it could be a home. But now all of it was a stage where a sick performance had played out, a performance in which I had been cast as the naive wife, the foolish woman who trusted too easily, loved too deeply, and expected too much. I thought about my husband. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was calculated, cold, cruel. He had chosen a young boy, manipulated him, weaponized him, and turned my vulnerability into entertainment. And even worse, he had remarried. While I was lying awake at night craving his love and presence, he was building a new life in another country with someone else. A part of me wanted to scream to break everything in the house, but I didn't. I had already been broken. Now I needed to rebuild. I began by taking control of my life again. I changed the locks on every door. I shut off the room where Arham once slept, sealing off the memory of his presence. I cleaned my bedroom top to bottom, washed every sheet, replaced the curtains, threw away anything that reminded me of the past 2 months. The room was mine again, not a place of trauma, but a sanctuary I was reclaiming. Then I bought a small camera system and installed it quietly around the house. Not out of fear, but because I would never be caught off guard again. I signed up for self-defense classes at the local gym. I even began volunteering at a women's shelter, listening to stories from women who had suffered in silence for far too long, just like me. It made me realize I was not alone, that what happened to me was horrific. Yes, but it did not define me. One day, while cleaning out the storage, I came across the old phone Arham had left behind. My hands trembled as I powered it on. The screen flickered to life. My heart pounded. There were pictures, dozens of them, of me sleeping, vulnerable, exposed. My blood boiled. But there were also voice notes, recordings of his calls with Farad, some more disturbing than the others. In one, Arham laughed and said, "She trusts me so much she doesn't even lock her door. I could do anything to her, and she'd never know." In another, Farad replied, "Good, keep it up. She deserves to suffer for trying to make demands from me. She thinks marriage gives her rights." That was the final straw. I didn't cry this time. I didn't feel shattered. I felt focused. I transferred every file to a hard drive. I wrote down every date, every timestamp. And then I contacted a lawyer, a strong, fierce woman who had handled many cases of emotional abuse and psychological manipulation. I showed her everything, told her the whole story without shame. She looked at me not with pity, but with admiration. "You have more than enough. she said. We'll file for divorce on grounds of mental cruelty, manipulation, and endangerment. And trust me, this will not be quiet. The legal proceedings began within a week. Letters were sent to Farad's family. My lawyer contacted authorities in Dubai as well. Since a minor had been involved in criminal behavior, I didn't care if Arham was just a boy anymore. He had made adult decisions, he had committed adult crimes, and my husband, he had underestimated me. He thought I would stay quiet, that shame would keep me silent. But shame doesn't belong to the victim. It belongs to the one who betrays, manipulates, and destroys. The divorce became public. Fahad's other marriage, once hidden, was exposed. His family, previously proud and upright in the community, now faced questions and disgrace. His company, which relied on a clean image, began to suffer. I didn't feel joy in his downfall, but I did feel justice. In the months that followed, I began healing. I went back to writing my childhood passion. I started journaling my experiences and later shared parts of my story anonymously through a women's blog. The responses flooded in. Thousands of women wrote to say they felt seen, understood, heard. Some cried, some raged, but all of them thanked me. For the first time in a long time, I felt strong. I felt alive. And one morning, as I stood by the window with a cup of tea watching the sunlight pour into my home, I realized something I had survived. Not just the betrayal, not just the emotional war, but the eraser of my voice. I had found it again, and this time I would never let it go. So, friends, that was the shocking story of how trust was broken, innocence was lost, and how one woman's life turned into a dangerous game of manipulation and betrayal. What are your thoughts about this? Do you think the woman was a victim, or was she also responsible in some way? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to give it a like. Subscribe to our channel for more such real-life stories that will leave you stunned, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next.